Everybody. All the committee is here, and good morning, Kristen and Catherine and Steve. I guess he's on as well, Collier. And it's Friday morning, April 30th. Boy, it's going to be good to get rid of April. We're a couple of minutes late, but we're gonna be working on H420. It's a miscellaneous House Ag bill, and I think we talked with the agency in regards to this. I guess it was the day before yesterday, either Tuesday or Wednesday. It's a bummer at the end of the session, you lose track of what days you're doing what on because everything's so busy. But anyways, Dr. Haas is, I guess, the first on our list. Is that the order you'd like to present in, Dr. Haas?
That would be wonderful, Senator Starr, if that's amenable to you and the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, and so it's, in regards to our on-farm slaughter portion of the bill and the farm share proposal that we were thinking about adding to the bill. So, Kristen, if you'd like to lead off, we'd be glad to hear from you.
Super. Thank you for the opportunity. Nice to see you all again. My name is Kristen Haas. I'm the State Veterinarian and Director for Food Safety and Consumer Protection with the agency. I have my dog under my office or chair, so hopefully she'll stay quiet during this. And again, thank you for the opportunity to come back and talk with you about the meat sector as well as the proposed amendment language. As you noted, Senator Starr, and you can see I brought back the experts this time, so hopefully we can get many of your questions that you brought up on Tuesday answered, or at least provide some additional insight that would help further those conversations along that you started on Tuesday. So we're prepared today to share with you some specific Vermont industry growth statistics. That was one of the questions that I believe came up, and some other information about the current on-farm slaughter statistics. And then I know we're also prepared to do a little bit of a deeper dive with regard to the verbiage in the proposed amendment. So what I would like to just say to start things off is a reminder that there has been a tremendous amount of positive growth within the meat sector here in Vermont. Some of that perhaps has been spawned by the pandemic that we've all just lived through and are still living through, but other pieces of it may have happened organically regardless. Either way, been some really positive changes, and Julie Bover, our Meat Inspection Section Chief, will be prepared to share more details with you on that. But I'm going to make the leap and say that I'm sure we can all agree that that's a wonderful direction to be headed in. We also appreciate the funding that the legislature has supported that is designated to facilitate the continued sustainability and expansion of this sector, so we can all keep eating. I'm a strong eater, so I'm a proponent of anything that will allow us to keep doing that without interruption. And there's been a lot of good work that I know you heard from Abby Willard on Tuesday, and work that funding will help to support. And then I also mentioned this on Tuesday, but I think it's worth a restate here. Dr. McNamara and Julie and the whole agency team have worked very hard to get the Cooperative Interstate Shipment program up and running. That has to do with the expansion of our industry and has afforded Vermont producers the opportunity to expand their markets more easily outside of the state, both regionally and nationally and beyond. So that's been a great achievement within the last 6 months or so, and happy to hear more if you would like about that from our meat inspection folks. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that the discussion today will keep us all moving forward in a positive direction in support of all of Vermont's meat sector. And And again, I think we have the right people in the virtual room this time to give you the level of detail that the committee deserves and would be helpful to you in your continued deliberations. So, Senator, with your Senator Starr, with your permission, perhaps would it make sense to let Julie cover some of those expansion statistics and background with you all, and then I know Kathy McNamara has some additional information on the Wyoming program and language, because I know that is something that the committee has discussed. And then again, Steve is here to do a bit of a deeper dive as needed into the actual proposed amendment language. So that's what we would propose, but default to your preference if you have a different one.
No, it would be good. I think you're on the right track. It'd be good to hear from Julie on the growth, and then move to Kathy on the rest of it, and then we'll hear from Steve at the end.
Thank you. Great. Well, Julie, I'm going to turn my video off, and it's all you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Julie Beauvert, Program Section Chief for Meat Inspection. I'm glad to be here to let you know what we have been working on, and to let you know we have been extremely busy. The phones have been ringing. We've been having a lot of people interested in coming on board under state inspection. One of the ones that we're currently working on that is almost ready to open is a plant in Westford. They've already been approved for their retail exempt, but moving towards state inspection. And as they move towards state inspection, this is for processing of red meat, livestock, and including pigs. So as they move toward this, they're in the midst of now building a slaughterhouse, which will be extremely helpful in that area. So they're hoping, they're going to be starting on it immediately, and it should be up and running, I'm hoping, in the next few months. The owner is very optimistic about getting everything done as quickly as possible. The other one we're working on, again, is one we've been working on for quite some time now. It's a slaughter facility up in Alburg. They're still struggling a little bit. They're going through an Act 250 permit. They're still waiting for approval. As the weather is getting better, though, it sounds like they'll be able to get through this a little bit easier. They have to have some construction. They have to look at their wastewater system. But once they do that, we're optimistic they'll be up and running soon. The shell is there, so it has a lot of the construction work complete, but a lot of permits that we have to wait for. One of the newer one that just came, or is now we're working with, is a small facility over in Northfield. Mostly with poultry, but they're also toying with working on custom slaughter and processing. This one is very interesting because their main goal is to work and to process small animals. So if this comes through, this is going to be helpful, because we really do need somebody out there that really is concentrating on the smaller animals in our state. One that I'm going to a week from Monday for final approval is a plant in Holland, Vermont. They're going to start out as a custom slaughter and processing facility, and then moving into an inspection as they get a little bit, more familiar with what they are doing. They're a new plant, so they want to start off with this, and it's actually good because of where they are. It'll help us to be able to go and work with them a little bit more closely before they jump into state inspection. Wilmington, Vermont, the old, I don't know if you remember, the 5th generation Adams farm that had been closed down for some time. We have a new owner. The facility is called Higley Hill. They are going to be going under USDA, but they'll be up and running by mid-May. This is a slaughter and processing facility of both livestock and poultry. So they're coming on board very, very quickly. And then just recently, I went to Wolcott and met with a young couple that are building a small processing facility in that area. And it will just be processing, not slaughter at that time. But they should be up and running again, I would say in another month or two. They're still under construction, so still have quite a bit of stuff to do, but we're optimistic that they'll be around soon. And then just to talk about the Interstate Shipment Program really, really quickly, I just want to let you know Bros Market, who is one of our larger state slaughter facilities, is leaning toward this program, and hopefully they will be able to come under this program. So it will allow a lot of the state producers to be able to then ship their product out of state. So this is what we have and what we know at this point. We're still getting a lot more phone calls, a lot more inquiries that come in, but this is a really good baseline of what is coming down the road.
So you have at least 5 or 6 new facilities coming online, and the money that we had in the early approach bill on 315 to help with slaughter facilities. Do you know if you've been able to do any grants to any of these places to help them along or not?
So as the money becomes available, I know Abby Willard and AgDev has been working with some of these folks, and as we are able to get those applications sent to them, and as they do come in, we will help them as much as we can. We do know that we're still waiting for the final decisions on where this money is going to go and when the applications can start being received.
Yeah.
But we have let them know that there will be money available and to encourage them to go forth with that.
And so what if this, what you just told us, if this all happens, how many slaughter facilities will that give us statewide?
So we have the one in Westford and the one in Alburgh. So those are going to be 2 state inspected slaughterhouses that'll be coming on board. The one in Northfield, we're thinking next year, 2022. Holland, we're hoping that they come under state inspection maybe by the end of the year. Now, the one in Wilmington is a USDA slaughter and processing facility. They are coming online next month. So that's so we definitely have the one in Westford, the one in Alburgh, and the one in Wilmington that'll be under inspection.
Yeah, so there'd be 3 then. And we have how many at the present time?
We have 2 state facilities, and I believe there's 7 USDA facilities at this moment.
10. So we'd have a total of 12 hopefully by, pretty soon. Yeah. Any questions from the committee in regards to Brian? Senator Coleman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Julie, I'm trying to picture geographically where all of these are, and I don't hear a lot of southern towns.
Wilmington is in the southern part of the state.
Okay, I know where Wilmington is. Beyond that, though?
So Westford is more like Essex area. Holland is
Northeast.
north, very north.
There's a little place in Troy too that's trying to get straightened around to be on, right? A custom place.
Actually, we were just there a couple of days ago. Yep, we're just waiting. We're just waiting for the wastewater permit to come through, and yeah.
So there's nothing in Rutland County?
Do you have any animals down there, Senator?
There's a few.
Oh yeah, Chris is pointing his finger in your direction. Yeah, we used to have one right in Rutland, I thought, Senator. Is that one closed? Didn't we have a slaughter facility in Rutland or right near Rutland
I thought.
City?
There was one across the line, I think, in New York State, right over the border, I think.
Yep. Yeah, so that area is light then for facilities.
Yep.
Any other questions for Julie, Senator Pearson?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. And if my question should be held till later, Catherine or Dr. Haas or somebody, let me know. But, one of the things we're contemplating here is more of the on-farm options, and the pre-ownership structure that they're trying in Wyoming. So I wanted to ask about that. And I'll just say, from where I'm coming from, our farmers work in a universe where we basically have set them up to labor away in an economy that doesn't really, we don't have a sustainable food economy, I would say. Our food systems have downgraded pay for farmers systematically for at least 50 years. And one of the great sort of hopeful moments that we've been on the front edge of here in Vermont when it comes to vegetable growers has been the direct to consumer CSA models. I've been a member of CSA, and what I've come to deeply appreciate is that allows consumers to weather some of the uncertainty of farming with your farmer, because you subscribe and you prepay. It's got just loads of benefits for the economy and for the consumer and for the farmer. And it promotes a sort of small scale sustainable approach. I mean, the national dialogue is totally fictional on this front, but is pretending that Biden's going to take away your cheeseburger, right? Have we all seen this headline? We're not oblivious to the impact of beef in particular on climate. But if we reorient our attitude towards local beef, as an example, then the climate picture gets much closer to a sustainable model. So I'm hoping you can comment on the approach that we're entertaining here around Wyoming. Is Wyoming running into trouble? Are we aware of the feds coming down on them? And as a follow-up, the on-farm provisions that we have been pretty successful from as we understand it, feedback from farmers themselves. But from the agency and from your point of view, have there been problems that are just not hitting the headlines, or what help us understand this? Because it seems the upsides are pretty apparent from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I don't know who would want to comment on I guess, Julie, you'd get the complaints, right? Or with Dr. Haas, if you had complaints and on the on-farm slaughter business and from people, or you got any comment on that part of it yet? Or numbers of farmers that are using on-farm slaughter? And I know you've had a problem with them registering or sending in a notice, and we're going to deal with that as well as we move forward. But could you report on that?
Senator Starr, perhaps this would be a good, based on the questions that were just presented, maybe this would be a good time to let Kathy report on Dr. McNamara report on the information she has, because she does have some added insights on Wyoming, as well as some of the statistics that I believe you're asking about.
Yeah. Morning, Catherine, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. It's good to see everyone this last day of April. So yes, I can touch on what I know about the Wyoming program, as well as I did do a summary of statistics of from 2013 until April of this year, as far as the on-farm slaughter registrations and numbers. So I'll touch on both of those. So as far as the amendment in Wyoming, so because of the language that was passed, Wyoming did have a targeted review by the USDA, where the USDA goes to Wyoming in person. And so they had that over this past year at some point in 2020. I don't exactly know the dates, but they were visited. And so I heard from both the USDA representative and from the Wyoming director. So this is my understanding of sort of what happened. So the law was written outside of their meat inspection laws. It was written into what's called their cottage laws, or like their food service laws. So the meat inspection laws still exist in Wyoming. You know, they're separate from what that law was written. And the meat inspection laws require all handlers of meat and poultry to license with the Wyoming Meat Inspection Program. And as part of holding a license, they're subject to all the regulations that come along with being a meat handler in their state. So if any producer wanted to do the herd share that the law wrote about, they were automatically required to follow the meat inspection laws, which was to license. And it also, for them, if they were to follow the herd share language, then that would require them to come under the custom exempt regulations, which they can. For those requirements, with the custom requirements, the producer can either bring those animals in the herd share to a custom facility, or the producer themselves can have a custom facility and do that process themselves. But they're required to follow all of the custom requirements for a custom exempt facility. So based on, or because of this, the fact that the Wyoming program could still enforce the equal to regulations, the USDA deemed their program is still equal to, despite that law that was written, and they have not designated the state, meaning they did not take their program away. So that's my understanding of that.
Yep. Chris?
Thank you. That's helpful. So Michael, does that give us an opening that you're hearing?
I've been in touch with the agency over the past, 48 hours. And I kind of feel like this guy in Washington, D.C. that I knew, on every Sunday morning, he'd go out and he'd put quarters in his ears, and he'd take the Washington Post and he'd like start screaming about everything in the Washington Post, about how everything was wrong and how they didn't know what they were talking about. And I kind of feel like him right now, because what I've learned from the agency, and I tried to call down to DCFSIS yesterday, and I just got kind of run around. I think there's kind of a tortured interpretation of the personal use exception going on. And when you look at their guidance document, and it says that there can be multiple owners, and it says that owners can slaughter for their own use, and they can provide meat for the owners and the household guests and non-paying employees. It seems like an owner should be able to qualify for the personal slaughter exception. But what is an owner? And so apparently the agency talked to FSIS, and they say multiple owners can own a single animal, but all of them must participate in the slaughter, which is just, I think, unfeasible.
That would work good if 10 people owned it. You know, they could a little maybe drinking party and have 10 there to slaughter the animal. I'm sure it would be done very professionally that way.
So I think FSIS is concerned about misuse of the animal share language, and I think they are providing an interpretation that navigates their prior interpretations while leading to the conclusion that you can't have an animal share program unless it's being custom slaughtered according to the custom slaughter provisions. And I don't agree with that interpretation. So it's really kind of up to you if you think that if you go forward with the animal share language, will it subject the state to the assessment that Dr. McNamara described that Wyoming went through, and whether or not you think the state would survive that inspection and would not be designated as no longer equal to. I think that's kind of, do you take the risk of losing equal to status with this language? And that's a policy decision.
But Michael, all of this is based on interpretation of the state law or federal law, but it's all in how you, the way I understand it from you. And nothing is in the statute, US or Vermont too. I thought our statutes were pretty clear.
So it's about a provision in the Federal Meat Inspection Act and the regulation, specifically the one that I have is 9 CFR 303.1 subdivision A1. It says the requirements of this act, the Federal Meat Inspection Act, and the requirements for inspection do not apply to the slaughtering by any individual of livestock of his own raising and the preparation by him and transportation and commerce of the carcasses, parts thereof, meat and meat food products of such livestock exclusively for use by him and members of his household and his non-paying guests and employees. Now, leaving aside the bad gender use, the key concern is it says any individual owning the livestock and of their own raising. So that's what you discussed with FSIS. It was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, about whether or not an individual would include multiple owners. And that's when they said, yes, it would include multiple owners.
Yeah.
But now they're saying, in order for the personal use exception under 303.1 A1 to apply for multiple owners had to take part in the slaughter. And I don't see that in this language. And there's so many different fact scenarios that I ran by Steve. And the one that kind of hits home for me the most is I have a friend who just bought his grandfather's farm and half of the grandfather's herd. And the grandfather moved down the road into a single floor house because he was getting older. The grandfather had a fall about a couple of months ago, can't participate in raising the herd, but he still owns the half of the herd. If my friend slaughters an animal, he can't provide the meat to his grandfather because his grandfather's not part of his household and his grandfather wasn't present for the slaughter. I mean, that seems pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
And so I think there will just be non-compliance, frankly. And I already know that there's non-compliance. There's no way that there are multiple owners now. Everybody knows that. And I am certain that multiple owners aren't present for the slaughtering of the animal.
Well, they might be to pick their meat up and, to get there because you don't have, unless the farm has a lot of cooler space, they're gonna take their meat from the farm on the day that, I would think on the day that it's butchered, and take it home or take it to their meat cutter or something. Brian had a question, Senator.
Yes, thank
Collmore.
you. You kind of asked already, but I'll just do it directly. So the language, Michael, says take part in.
No, that's the thing. There is no language that says everybody needs to take part in. It's FSIS's interpretation.
So that could mean just being present. Doesn't mean you have to actually do anything.
I really don't know. I don't know if it means you have to be an active participant or not. I don't know, because it's not in the law. It is not in the guidance document, and it's not even in the guidance document that they had 4 years ago, because this is relatively new.
All right, thank you.
Steve, did you want to comment on Michael's letting you talk? But I don't want you two lawyers to do like most.
We've already
lawyers
been
on
doing.
opposite
We've already
sides
been
argue
doing
against each other.
Well,
but
we've
you're
got a
running
pretty
the
long
clock
thread
out.
going on.
I accused poor Mike of being a good morning, everyone. I accused poor Mr. O'Grady of being grumpy at the end of the session.
Well,
which I am.
Have you ever seen him at the beginning of the session? Because he can be grumpy then too.
Well, I think they're both wrong. Michael's attitude is usually very positive, and I appreciate that.
As do I.
Go ahead.
Well, Senators, obviously totally up to you, but this is the whole issue I was planning on talking about. I don't know if you want me to jump in now, or if you want to have, or not. You want me to just get started on my bit?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
So I want to just start by saying I think actually this is a pretty exciting time in Vermont in this arena. And the meat program at our agency is doing a terrific job. The pandemic, though, did expose some important capacity deficiencies, which we've all known have been ongoing. But I actually think that it highlighted some of those deficiencies. And then with your assistance, particularly with the working lands money and with other money, there are real plans. And as Julie was just talking about, there are real plans to boost capacity. And really importantly, through Dr. McNamara's lead, I forget exactly when this occurred, but within the last 6 months, we now are able, state inspected facilities are now able to sell out of state, which was a huge change. I mean, before state facilities could only sell meat in state. Now we have state facilities have access to the entire market. So there have been tremendous strides in the recent past, and there are ongoing strides that we anticipate with the new slaughterhouses coming online, with the new money. We are going in the right direction. And so it's exciting. I think we all know our farmers need to be able to diversify. We all know our farmers need more options. We all know we need more capacity. But my plea to the committee and the agency's pleas to the committee is we can't jeopardize the gains that we've made by chipping away at the margins, particularly on issues that USDA really cares about. And I think that's what I'd like to try to flesh out a little bit, is exactly what can be done and what FSIS, which is the USDA division that monitors meat safety, cares about. And a lot of what you propose in this new language can already be done, but it has to be done very carefully. And I think it makes a little bit of sense to look at the exemptions and to look at the broader policy to evaluate this, because I think when you get too far into the regulation, you lose the bigger picture, which is really what's important here. So the personal use exemption was written, I'm convinced, and FSIS basically confirmed, it was written for one scenario, and that is a farmer could raise an animal, slaughter it, and eat it, and keep it in the household. That was all, that's what the regulation says. The regulation does not talk about a farmer selling animals to other people, does not talk about a farmer having other people slaughter animals. It was designed for a farmer to be able to slaughter their own animals, and it's the personal use. A number of years ago, without ever changing the regulation, which is pretty plain on its face that it was never intended to be expanded, but FSIS expanded their interpretation, which is good for farmers. They've now allowed it to be more liberally interpreted, meaning, because in the regulation, it says you have to raise an animal. That's part of the regulation. In order for it to be personal use, you have to raise it. So the idea of you selling an animal and then someone else slaughtering it does not really fit the profile, because you're obviously not raising an animal when you buy it 5 minutes before slaughter. But USDA, I think, was trying to be flexible, and so they said, okay, if you buy an animal from a farmer, you now own it, you can then slaughter it. So that is clearly allowed now. A farmer can sell an animal to someone else, that person can slaughter the meat and keep it. A farmer can also sell an animal to multiple individuals, and those individuals can slaughter the animal and keep their share of the meat. So all of that is already permissible. What's not permissible is for the farmer to participate in the slaughter, because then the farmer's no longer handling animals, the farmer's handling meat. And that is the key distinction here, is you can sell animals, you can't sell meat. So when and I agree with Mike that it's the idea that 10 people have to go and all slaughter an animal together is silly. I think FSIS probably thinks that's silly, but they're also trying to stay true to their regulation, which was, it's all about personal use. So you raise an animal, you slaughter it, you can keep it. The other thing is, without you actually can engage, you actually can provide meat to others through the custom slaughter exemption. So a custom slaughterhouse is not inspected, but they have to register and be licensed with the agency, and they have to meet certain safety protocols. And we do go check them out, but we're not there when they're actually cutting the meat. So this can all happen. You can go in with your animal to a custom slaughterer, and you can come out with your meat. That all happens. Again, it's about the animal versus the meat. So
Steve, can you hear me, Steve?
yeah, you broke up a little bit, but yes.
In the regulations, does it specifically say farmer, or does it say person? Because you referred to it as allowing farmers to butcher their own cattle and keep the food for themselves. And so does it say individual, or does it say person, or does it specifically say farmer?
That's a good question, Senator Starr. What it says is individual, and then it uses, after that, it uses the word him. But the reason I say farmer is because it says an individual can raise the animal. So to me, if you're raising an animal, you're a farmer. You're not, somebody living in downtown Burlington's not probably raising an animal.
That's what brought this law to being, was people in Burlington were raising their own animals in the backyard and slaughtering them in the backyard, and they didn't like doing it that way, and the farmers that sold them the animal to start with didn't like that kind of a practice because it was sort of inhumane. And so that's what got us on to the on-farm slaughter stuff in the very beginning, was to get these animals where they should be, where they would be much better cared for. And as far as your custom slaughterhouse, that means you have to take that animal that's used to being on the farm, load it into a trailer or on a truck of some kind, and ship it to a custom slaughter facility to be slaughtered. And a lot of people think that's very inhumane, just loading them on a vehicle and trucking them. Well, now it's not so bad because we've got more slaughter facilities, but there was a while where you either went up north to the people that got arrested, in, I think, Alberg or someplace up that way, or over to Bros. And I mean, then, all hell breaks loose in those slaughter facilities. And it was much more humane having them slaughtered right on the farm where they were raised.
Understood, Senator, and that's a great point. And Kathy or Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that a farmer can be a custom slaughterer, so that they don't have to take the animal off the farm if the farmer is a custom slaughterer. But the farmer cannot participate in the slaughter at all if it's under the personal use exemption, because the farmer no longer owns that animal that's being slaughtered, and so it's not the farmer's animal anymore. But the farmer can be a custom slaughterer, and if that farmer sells animals to other people, those people can use the farmer to slaughter, and then the farmer can return the meat to each individual who owns it. So there are ways right now to do it. And I think, I'm sorry, Senator Pearson, I think had a question. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I noticed Michael wanted to say something at one point when the chair was talking. So.
It's more confusing because the regs say individual raising, but then the guidance says owner. And then the guidance says that there can be multiple owners, right? So that's no longer an individual when it's multiple owners. So it's pretty confusing.
Agreed. And if I may, Senator Starr.
Sure.
This kind of gets to the crux of the issue, and this is where I think it's really helpful to take a step back, because when you get into that regulation and try to read it according to FSIS's new interpretation, it doesn't make any sense. But the problem is that this is an area of interstate commerce that the federal government regulates. And FSIS is very explicit about what it does care about. And when you think about the whole purpose of meat regulation, right, it's about food safety. And it's about ensuring that meat, not animals, meat that is sold in interstate commerce is properly and safely prepared so that consumers are protected. I mean, that's the whole premise of this entire situation. And that authority is with the federal government through the Commerce Clause. And because the federal government is clearly supreme in this arena, they have the authority to tell us what the rules are. And if they don't believe that we're equal to their rules, we no longer have a program. And we talked, a group of us.
Steve,
Yep.
we're not talking about interstate shipments. We're talking about intrastate, personally owned beef. And doesn't that change the rules a little bit?
Senator, it depends. It depends on the situation, but in this case, no, because for us to have a state, because intrastate commerce can still be interstate commerce, and the feds regulate a lot of activity that they consider to be interstate, even though it's within a single state. And in this instance, Congress has clearly stated that a state program can exist, but the federal government has the ability to not allow the state program to exist if it's not at least equal to the federal program. And so that's the issue here, is the federal government is saying personal slaughter means just that. It means that the owner of an animal is slaughtering it and keeping it. Once you start distributing meat through interstate or intrastate commerce, in the federal government's opinion, you are no longer, and really it's the only opinion in my view that matters, you are no longer within that exemption. And that's where the step back comes in. So you're looking at not what's happening to the animal. This is about what's happening to the meat. So if the whole point of the meat inspection program is if you are distributing meat to others, selling it, trading it, bartering it, whatever, if you are giving meat to other people, then you need to be licensed and inspected. And so once you do away with that core sort of objective, you're violating the whole premise of the Meat Inspection Act, which is consumers are not going to be able to purchase meat from someone else in the market without ensuring that that meat is inspected. It's kind of an individual responsibility sort of caveat in my view. Is I think what the government is saying is if you want to slaughter your own animal and eat it, that's on you. You can do that. That's not affecting anyone else. That's only affecting you and your own household. If you want to assume that risk, then we're okay with that. But once you start slaughtering animals and distributing that meat to other people, that's no longer just on you. That now is a food safety issue. It implicates interstate commerce and interstate commerce. And if you don't do it properly, you can't do it. So that the reg you can't read intelligently because it doesn't make any sense the way it's been interpreted. Although that broader interpretation is more permissive and it's to farmers' advantage. So, you know, even though we can criticize the reading of the regulation, I think what the federal government was trying to do was to give farmers more options, and they did. I mean, it is better for farmers and for owners that they're interpreting the reg in this tortured way. But it's very hard, I think, for us as a state of Vermont and for our agency to say to the federal government, look, this reg, you're interpreting it permissively, but not permissibly enough. We just don't have the legal authority to be able to say to the federal government, you have to be more expansive in your interpretation of a regulation than you're already being. And so they did not mince words when we talked to them about, can a farmer or any owner distribute meat outside of their household? No, the answer is no, they cannot. If you are slaughtering animals, you can keep that meat, you can keep your own share. You cannot distribute it to others without being licensed and inspected.
What about if the owner, like myself, say, if I wanted to buy a quarter of a beef and I had an itinerant slaughter or go to the farm with me, could they slaughter the animal? Yes,
Senator. The itinerant slaughter can slaughter the animal. There's another issue about that came up with FSIS yesterday that we've got to work with them on, but it doesn't have anything to do with this current language in front of the committee. So I don't think it's relevant today, but yes, an itinerant slaughter can perform that function for the owner. And again, the owner keeps the meat.
And on the farm, they could go to the farm with the owner, slaughter the animal for the owner, and then the owner would take the meat and go home. And you also said that we could have multiple owners. So if there was 4 owners and they decided, well, the farmer can't help us and we don't really know quite how to do this, the 4 of them could hire an itinerant slaughterer, take them to the farm on a Saturday or whatever day, as long as it's a he, right? It can't be a she, because take him to the farm. He could slaughter the animal and quarter it, and they could take the meat and go home. Why wouldn't that be legal?
I think it is, Senator, as long as all of the owners are there. I think that's
FS. How could they pick their meat up if they weren't there?
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that, and Julie or Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's.
So I don't know. Any questions from committee members? Did you say something, Steve? Because I don't know if I'm freezing up or what, but.
No, I didn't. Thanks, Senator.
Yeah, questions from committee members? Boy, hey, you've got them all put to sleep or something, Steve. Michael, I thought though we did something in one of the previous laws about the itinerant slaughterers. Did, Did we-
You did the what Steve has explained for itinerant slaughters and for the custom slaughter facility, that's already in I don't know if the itinerant slaughter is in federal law, but the custom slaughter is in federal and state law, and the itinerant is definitely in state law as well. You everything that Steve just summarized, a farmer can do now, and a person that owns an animal can do now. I do have a question if the itinerant slaughter can come to a farm where the person's conducting on-farm slaughter and then break the animal down past a quarter. I don't think the state law allows that.
but they could go to a quarter, right?
They could go to a quarter.
So, I mean, even if we required the on-farm slaughter program, if it's for others than I don't even know if I'd mention the farmer, other than if it's for anybody other than the owner. I would think somehow we could word the law so that a group of, in the farm share proposal, that if they hired an itinerant slaughterer, they could perform that on the farm and take their quarters home.
You basically already did that, because you clarified 2-3 years ago that multiple persons can purchase the animal and conduct the slaughter on the farm, provided that the farmer who raised it does not assist in the slaughter. And so those people, those multiple new owners that aren't the farmer, can have an itinerant slaughter come to do it. They could take their animal to a custom slaughter facility. That's the options right now. Or they could do the slaughter themselves on the farm where they bought the animal, provided that they do it in a sanitary way. So
Yeah.
That's the existing law and the existing options right now. What the farm share does is it allows the person that buys the share to be considered an owner, and then be able to receive the broken down past the quarter product of the slaughter from the farmer that raised the animal. And that's the difference, right? And so that's where FSIS is saying that that's the sale of meat that's uninspected. They're not saying, they don't interpret that as an owner receiving their part of the animal. They consider that to be the farmer selling meat to people without inspection.
Yeah, Chris, you're into that timeshare stuff, and I thought you said you buy your vegetables ahead of time before they're grown. So why couldn't we set a system up where you could buy your beef ahead of time in a timeshare? And as long as you agreed to a particular animal or whatever, and have it butchered on the farm by an itinerant slaughterer.
That was
But
going to be
ahead.
sort of my question for Michael, because I do get my dirty vegetables from Heinsberg. If the
They're
season
dirty?
goes well, and I lose money if the season floods out, and that's just the way it is. Michael, could we be talking about some contract law here? I mean, what about when I become an owner of some portion of an animal that I also am contracting to stipulate, the way that I expect it to be slaughtered and processed? Is that, well, so that's one question. And I'd love you to.
That's actually what the language does. It requires you to enter an ownership agreement, which is a contract. And the ownership agreement, it doesn't specify how you're going to slaughter, but it specifies that how you are going to participate in the raising of the animal, which would probably be you're going to pay for their feed, et cetera, et cetera. But that is what the language is. It is a contractual relationship.
And couldn't we mandate that anyone entering into this kind of a contract, the contract must include something that handles this slaughter question in a way that gives us some cover? And could you just review Wyoming? I'm trying to decipher here. Well, let me ask you one question at a time. So does the contract details provide any opportunity to give us security?
I think if you added into the criteria that the animal needed to be slaughtered at a custom facility or a state inspected facility, then you have no issue.
Well, sure,
right?
But that still leaves it out of reach for a whole bunch of farmers, right? So,
right.
So is that why Wyoming could do this, because of that kind of language or kind of stipulation in there? Well,
Dr. McNamara, she made a very good point when she started off her testimony that their animal share language is outside of their meat inspection language, right? So you have to try to read the two of them together, and it's one of those things where it's probably about how that state agency is interpreting their meat inspection law. And Dr. McNamara, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she said that when she talked to Wyoming, they're requiring those animal shares to be slaughtered at custom or greater. And so that's not how their law reads. Their law reads that the only thing that they need to do for the animal share is to go through brand inspection. So to make sure you're not a cattle rustler. So that's if their state agency is interpreting their meat inspection laws requiring custom or greater for animal shares, you're basically where you are right now in Vermont.
Did we do something with fallow deer in the harvesting of fallow deer years back, separate from the ag agency because of the meat inspection laws or something? Do you recall anything along that line? Seems like we did something different to allow
fallow deer, depending on which definition you're looking at, are livestock. And so probably under the state, and this is my opinion. I believe that the state agency would say fallow deer are livestock that need to be slaughtered according to slaughter requirements.
Yeah. So.
But the agency can speak for themselves on that.
But if we tried moving this on-farm slaughter to some other program away from the meat inspection program, I can't imagine where we would move it to. I mean, But
I think you're back at that kind of original question. Do you want to effectively challenge FSIS's interpretation of what an owner can do and who the owner is for the purpose of the personal use exception? That's
Well,
really what this comes down to.
I would feel more comfortable if we had a letter from them explaining their interpretation of that law, and if it's the way we to our advantage having that letter, and then I just assume challenge them. I mean, the feds, they screw up every day. I mean, on stuff. So, I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to challenge them if we had a letter stating, you know, who the owner was, the person that owned the animal, and if we could get that a letter from them clarifying that. Steve?
So Senator, on that point, we did ask for, formal guidance from FSIS. We also asked them to appear today, but since we just raised the issue with them on Tuesday, they, and not surprisingly, frankly, they couldn't give us anything formal that quickly, but I don't think it's impossible that before next session, they could get us something formal. I do think, though, we come back to that beginning point, which is the way the regulation is actually worded. It's quite clear that the owner can only keep the meat within that person's own household. So that's where this all, I think, comes to a head, is that you can have multiple owners. You can have multiple owners getting a piece of that animal, but you can't have owners distributing the meat outside their own household. And that's kind of, that's one of the prohibited acts in the law, is that you can't sell unlicensed, uninspected meat. So, that to me is kind of that threshold issue, is yes, this regulation is being interpreted more broadly and the interpretation is confusing, but when you get back to the actual law and then you get back to what is regulated, which is providing meat to others, I don't think it's that. I think it is pretty clear, actually, that people can't provide meat outside of their own household.
But
Yeah,
Steve,
Michael. So why couldn't
I agree that
be part of the law?
I agree that the law
Go ahead.
says that it's the farmer can provide to their household, but it also says to their employees and to their non-paying guests. And the law says that the meat can move in interstate commerce, transportation and transfer in commerce. It doesn't say interstate, it says transportation in commerce. So it doesn't mean that the meat has to stay within that household site. They have contemplated that the meat will move outside of the household to employees and non-paying guests. So it would be great to just say household, but that's not what the law says. So I think there is a way to make the animal share language work according to FSIS's interpretation. You say that the person that has the animal share has to participate in the slaughter of the animal, because FSIS said you can have multiple owners.
Which we intend that they will participate.
and if they participate for the arrangement of the slaughter by a contract, does that participate enough, Michael?
I don't know. That's the FSIS came up with this, to my knowledge, yesterday, and I'm just volleying back, right? And so,
Michael, is it your testimony that Vermont Senate Agriculture is on the cutting edge of meat processing questions in this country.
I can tell you you are, because literally what you drafted as the on-farm bill is in the USDA guidance from 2018. The notes on the personal exception is basically the on-farm law in Vermont. You are cutting edge, Senator Pearson. This is what it's literally in the USDA guidance now.
I
So-
told you guys we were way out ahead of the curve on most things.
Yeah, and yet here we are trying to return policy to the 1940s. My God.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Maybe they're just waiting for us to take our next step.
well, that so Dr. McNamara, could you help me understand? You were clear that kind of the risk here is that the feds come in and say and remove our equal to status. Is that the term you used?
Yes, it's.
What is
the,
that?
Go ahead.
So what is that risk for us? Help me understand. I think it's a big deal, but I'd like to,
It is.
to understand.
Big deal. So going back to Senator Starr's, one of his comments. So what governs this is the Federal Meat Inspection Act. The Federal Meat Inspection Act gives the United States Secretary of Agriculture the ability to allow states to have meat inspection programs as long as they are run equal to that of the USDA FSIS, the Food Safety Inspection Service. If a state doesn't have one, or decides not to have one, like there are several states, the USDA is who is in charge of intrastate all of the meat regulations in a state that does not have a program. In a state that they allow to have a program, that state has to demonstrate every year that they are running things that in a method that is equal to. If the USDA determines through one of those audits or through something such as this, that they no longer feel that the state is running things in an equal to manner, and it's called designating a state. So where they let the governor know that they will no longer have the ability to have a state meat inspection program. So any state inspected facilities, anything like that will no longer be inspected, will no longer have that service. Our CIS program in this case would go away. The state goes back to having the USDA enforce the USDA law in the state.
And basically we'd start moving real slow at a minimum, right?
Or maybe even go backwards.
So is that a curable, like, do you get a letter and then it's the next day, or is there, I'm trying to, we're in a tricky timing thing because we've got to move this bill very quickly. Session's about to adjourn.
Right.
Trying to understand, like, could we come back in January and repeal this if we got notice of their intent?
I guess I would go back to, it happened in Maine, I think 2 to 3 years ago, where they passed a food sovereignty law and they added in meat and poultry. I believe they were given, I think the designation it happens within 30 days once the letter is received. But the governor agreed to call a special session at the end of the summer to where they called their legislature back and took out the meat and poultry out of that food sovereignty law. So then USDA stayed that designation because they were going to do that. So we gave them a little bit of extra time.
So
Well,
serious.
the other thing, Chris, there's a lot of money that floats with us doing the inspection. I don't know for sure just how much, but the feds pay a lot of money to our ag agency or to the state to perform this inspection in their absence. So it's, do you know, Kristen, how much money that is, or Kathy, how much money we get from the feds for meat inspection?
I believe it's about, 1.5 million at this point. We have 3 cooperative agreements with them. So They pay 50% of our state inspection program. When we do cross utilization, they pay 100%. And then for our CIS program, they'll pay 60%. So it depends on where we're working at any one time.
See, that's yesterday when I reported the ag budget, a lot of their money comes from the federal government to run different programs and portions of different programs. So I mean, I really wouldn't want to jeopardize that equal to or better than. I just want to make sense out of and permission in a law that would allow people to go buy a part of an animal or a whole animal. And most of these people really think about the humane treatment of that animal. That's why they want to buy their own meat and their own animal. Have that set up so that we can, Chris? Oh, did you have a question, Chris? Well, are there other questions from the committee of the crew from the agency? If, I guess, Steve?
Thank you, Senator. I would just first emphasize that FSIS did mention their delegation to us several times in the last few days. So I asked them to stop because it was enough, but but they did mention that. But also there's a provision of the amendment that is the agency supports, or at least is certainly doesn't have any concerns about, and that's raising the animal limits. The agency is not in any way opposed to doing that. That is something that could allow, for greater limits for the farmers without jeopardizing our status. So that's just one final thought on that.
So it's mainly the farm share language that you have some concerns over.
Yes, Senator, and even that it's workable. In fact, it can already happen. It's just the key is each owner needs to maintain possession of the animal, and then the meat that comes from that animal. The farmer cannot be providing the meat, and one owner cannot be providing meat to another owner. So right now, the share can happen. It's just that the owners need to have possession of the animal and the meat, essentially.
Yeah. Well, any further questions from any of the witnesses, any statements? If not,
I wonder, this is sort of a thing that we often do to push things off for a while, but we said that we wanted to go ahead with the higher limits and then put together require someone to come back to us in January with better ideas to how to go about the farm share parts. So we're not totally dropping it. We're just sort of putting it off until January.
Yeah, we can talk about that, Senator. Kathy, do you have something?
I just wanted to mention, I was going to go over the statistics, but I sent a spreadsheet form and I shared that with Linda. So if she can share that with you guys if you wanted to read it. I don't need to read you the numbers. I'm sure you can see them yourselves.
Yeah.
Unless you want me to.
Yeah. Anything else from anybody? Well, want to thank you folks from the agency, for your time and for participating on this subject. I think we'd all like to reach the same place. It's just stumbling over federal law that's the difficult part. But Chris?
Just really quickly, I assume we will pursue the increases of the numbers, and that compared to our conversation this morning seems timid. But if people ask us on the floor, do we have any catalogs of complaints or concerns that you've heard that we should be aware of, or is it minor or non-existent, or what? Could you just, you said it's in a spreadsheet, but just what's the snapshot?
The numbers of people who have registered and the numbers of animals are what's in the spreadsheet. So it's not complaints, it's just numbers utilizing the on-farm slaughter. As far as complaints, I am not aware of any specific complaints. We do have some cases. I looked back at cases of basically people slaughtering for others without a custom slaughter facility or a license. And then also for selling uninspected meat. So snapshot, there was 3 in 2020, 1 in 2019, 1 in 2018, 2 in 2017, 5 in 2016. That's as far as I went back. One of the ones from this 2020 is actually the one that Senator Starr alluded to up near Troy, who's coming under custom inspection.
And he swears that it was his own meat that they were cutting. But anyways,
But he stepped over the property
get
line.
worked out.
He took a wander into the road and it just threw it all over.
But anyways, thanks a lot, guys, and appreciate your time and your thoughts on this, and we'll keep you informed. So
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you.
So committee, we have heard the ins and outs and the issues here. I hate study committees, really. I mean, they just drag on and on and on. And why don't we take a whack at letting Michael draft up some language, if he hasn't already done it, that would allow animal shares, and but the owners have to have a contract with the farmer of share ownership, and we could even put in that they would have to employ an itinerant slaughterer to slaughter the animal. I don't know if that would make it clear enough so that the feds wouldn't bother us or not. Michael, you're our lawyer. What do you think?
I think my general conclusion is that there's a way to navigate this. My kind of time sensitive conclusion and with the considerations of the equal to at play is that I don't know if you want to do it so quickly right now. I am more than willing to work with Dr. McNamara and Steve and FSIS over the next several months to figure this out. I think it can be done. And just kind of freestyling right now, I think you have the contractual relationship. You provide that the multiple owner doesn't need to reside at the same residence, which the USDA guidance already says that under the personal exception. And then you provide that the owners either need to participate in the slaughter, or the slaughter has to be done at a custom or better facility. I think that there's a way to do that. I just can't guarantee by the time you need to pass this bill that FSIS is going to say that's okay. And then if they don't say that's okay, then that's going to jeopardize equal to. And I know equal to is very important to the state and to the agency.
Well, yes, it's important to all of us. Chris, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, so I'm hearing Michael say he's gonna I'm very interested in this. I think it's important, but I've come to appreciate that we shouldn't be too cavalier about it. So Michael, you're saying you'll keep working and try to wrestle through it, and maybe by January we could have some ideas, right? About how,
Yeah.
how to thread the needle. Is there any value in us sending a letter to our delegation or to USFS or whomever, or should we just, I agree with you. I don't think a study committee is, I think this is sort of lawyers do the studying situation myself, but some way to make sure it's front and center so that it's on our minds in January. It makes a lot of sense to me. And
Yeah, I
Well,
think
if
this to me is
if it's
kind of like the,
agreeable with the committee, go ahead, Michael.
this to me is kind of like
Go ahead.
the chronic wasting disease testing issue that arose a few years ago, where you just have to navigate it with the feds about what they're going to require, and then navigate what the agency wants, and it takes time. You know, it takes time to get to that, and I think you can get to that, but it's going to take some time.
So if the committee's agreeable, I'd like to still put something, I don't know how.
You're frozen, Mr. Chair.
yeah, well, we'll let him come back, I guess. Ask him to restate what he'd like.
I think he was going to say he'd like to see something in the bill on it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And
Yeah, it's some kind of signal, and I like that too, only just so it's not, so we don't forget, but I kind of think we won't forget, but anyway.
I mean, Senator Bray does this all the time. He likes to say the Office of Legislative Counsel. He either writes a letter or an email asking us to do it, and sometimes he puts it in a bill that says the Office of Legislative Counsel shall work with interested parties, work with the agency, whoever, to draft a proposed way to authorize, animal share ownership, something like that, and slaughtering under animal share ownership. I could write a paragraph like that in 10 minutes.
What do we think, committee?
I think that something like that's good. Keep it on the front burner.
Yeah, I do too. I think
Yeah,
Bobby will be
that
back.
makes sense.
He's
Because I
gotta
didn't,
leave
when
at
I said before,
10:30.
I didn't mean to do a study committee. I meant to do something similar to what you were talking about, where Ledge Council and the agency just work on it.
Yeah, and there may be folks that will want to weigh in too. So interested parties, I like that. All right, so let's ask Michael to do that, and we're going to try to vote on this today, right? Because we're about to close down. Michael, is it realistic for you to take out the Wyoming language, put in that paragraph, and
Actually, what Bobby said earlier was we might have to come back Tuesday because it might not be possible. He's going to leave at 10:30 to go to appropriations because of all the amendments coming up on the budget bill. So
Okay.
we won't have time, I think, to vote it out today.
all right. So we also, I see an email that we're not meeting on the floor till 10 on Tuesday. So maybe we have a half an hour Tuesday morning. Linda, have you heard from Bobby, or you're not seeing him try to come back?
No, I don't see him yet.
Okay, so the only amendment then would be the numbers, doubling the numbers for on-farm, and then a provision directing the Office of Legislative Counsel in consultation with the agency and other interested parties to propose draft legislation regarding the slaughtering of animals under animal share contracts, right?
Yes.
Right.
Anybody else?
No, that sounds
Good.
good.
Yes, Michael, that would be
Works for me.
terrific.
Okay. All right. And nothing else would be on that amendment.
Not that we understand. We weren't tweaking other parts of the bill or anything over our conversation that I recall.
Yeah, I don't recall it either. Okay,
Okay.
I will have that for you Tuesday morning, and I'll try to get it done today and send it out so you can look at it over the weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate all your work and everybody. All right, I guess. Well, if he's got to be, if the chair has to be in approps in 2 minutes, I guess we're done. And
Isn't that what he said, Linda?
that,
I'm talking to Bobby right now, and I think 9:30 will be fine on Tuesday.
Yep.
Yes.
All that, but we could even start at 9 if they thought that it was gonna take that long.
What do you think, guys?
It's not gonna take
Whatever he
long.
thinks. I just like hearing him talk.
They say whatever you think. What do you want to do?
I think 9:30 is fine. We're going to just look at this language and vote it out. We don't need that. But he will see the language, Linda, today probably, so he can decide if he thinks that's.
Which may be a while, so it might be better.
Bobby is saying it's probably better at 9. Okay, 9 o'clock Tuesday.
Okay, tell them I'm sorry.
Okay, you got to go.
All
Okay.
right.
See you Tuesday.
Thank you to our guests and Michael and to Linda.